Without semiconductors, your smartphone would not be a smartphone. It would be a paperweight that occupies a big space in your pocket.
This is my video update from Napa on this Tuesday morning. Let's talk about some news. I am here at the marina, and you can see all of the interesting boats, including the Nemo submarine right over there. And I think the yellow submarine is that way. And the Pirates of the Caribbean boat is up that way. Or actually, I think the Pirates of the Caribbean boat already sailed off. But this is a good spot to do today's video because we are going to talk about another famous boat, and that is the Andromeda. The Andromeda yacht is back in the news. But first, let's discuss the Ukraine invasion of Russia that took place yesterday, the incursion into Russia by these Azov Ukraine forces. And the latest update on this incursion is that these forces that entered the Belgorod region, they have been wiped out. From what I understand, 47 of these guys were killed by the Russian military. They lost a whole bunch of tanks and other vehicles, and this was exactly what I think we all knew was going to happen. Actually, this doesn't surprise me at all because I was talking about this in a video a couple of days ago after the announcement that Bakhmut had fallen to the Russian forces and to Wagner. I was saying that Ukraine is going to have to do something to take away the media attention from Bakhmut because Zelensky was at the G7. We got the word that Bakhmut had fallen to the Russians. It is now Artyomovsk. And I said that Zelensky is going to, the collective West, actually, not only Zelensky, but the collective West is going to have to do something now very, very quick to move attention away from this major loss for the Zelensky regime and for the collective West. And sure enough, we got it in this incursion into Russian territory, into Belgorod. And that was the only purpose of this military operation into Russia. Its only purpose was to divert attention away from the fall of Bakhmut. That's it. Some people are saying this was a reconnaissance mission and the Ukraine military is testing Russia's borders, and the purpose of this incursion was to divert Russian military resources away from Zaparosa or Kherson or Donbass, whatever, and move them to the border with Ukraine and all of this stuff. That's just nonsense. It is just absolute nonsense. The entire purpose of this operation was to divert attention away from Bakhmut. It is actually what the collective West excels at. These types of media PR stunts is what they're very good at, because on a military level, this does nothing. It does nothing for Ukraine in this conflict with Russia. It serves no military strategic purpose. It's just a PR stunt. This was just a stupid PR stunt that got a lot of Ukrainians killed, Azov guys killed. That's all it did. And it hardens the Russian position. It hardens the Russian government's stance against the Zelensky regime. It unites the Russian people. It gives Putin a reason, if he wants. It gives the Russian military a reason, if they want to, I don't think they will, to retaliate. So the United States, they're saying that they had nothing to do with this. The U.S. actually came out with a statement, and they said that they do not encourage attacks outside of Ukrainian borders. That's what State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said. But he also said, and I quote, "But I think it's important to remind the world that Russia started this war. Ukraine has the right to decide how it wants to conduct its military operations, but Russia is the aggressor in this war," he stressed. So the United States is saying they had nothing to do with this, but, Ukraine has the right to invade Russia, according to the State Department spokesperson, but the U.S., they didn't green light this. Zelensky, he actually said that they have nothing to do with this either. He said that the Ukraine government has no connections to the event in Belgorod, and they are closely monitoring the situation. Of course they were involved in this. Of course they were. Maybe there are certain people in the Biden White House who had no idea that this was going on, but no doubt this was given the approval by the U.S. deep state, or a faction of the deep state, or the UK deep state. This sounds like a UK MI6 or whatever, UK deep state type of operation, in order to try and bait Russia into doing something that it doesn't want to do. And of course, the main purpose of all of this is to divert attention away from Artyomovsk. It's plain and simple, really easy to explain this story. Nothing more than that. A PR stunt, a PR media stunt, which did kind of work. I mean, a lot of people stopped talking about the Battle of Bakhmut and they started talking about the Ukraine incursion into Belgorod. So it did work to a certain extent. It doesn't change anything about the trajectory of the war at all. Talk about wasting human lives, wasting resources, wasting equipment. I mean, what a stupid thing for the Zelensky regime and the collective West to do, just so they can score some PR points. That tells you everything you need to know about how the collective West is going about this conflict. So let's I just wanted to check how I'm doing on time. So let's talk about the Andromeda, since we're here at the Napa Marina. We have a report from the UK Times. Let me pull it up here. The UK Times has come up with a report, and the title is "Ukraine Blew Up Nord Stream Pipelines. Germany Believes." How about that for a title? Everybody, Ukraine did it. Talk about throwing the Zelensky regime under the yacht, not under the bus, throwing the Zelensky regime under the yacht, the Andromeda yacht. Sabotage last September has been linked to Russia, but Berlin is said to be exploring fresh leads that implicate Ukraine. So the article talks about how at first everyone thought Biden may have done it, and Seymour Hersh came out with his report, which claimed that Biden was behind the Nord Stream attack. But the Times says that there were a lot of holes in Seymour Hersh's reporting. They didn't mention what the holes were, but anyway, the Times says there were holes in Seymour Hersh's reporting. Then they talk about how investigators are focused on Russia, and they were monitoring Russian naval activity in the Baltic and in the area of Nord Stream, and submarine activity. But the Times said that they can't figure out why Putin would want to do such a thing. It doesn't serve any of Putin's political, military, geopolitical interests. It removes his leverage. So they said that most likely Russia would not do this. They would not sabotage the Nord Stream pipeline. And the Times then returns to the Andromeda, and they say that German investigators are looking at the Andromeda and the people behind the Andromeda, who, according to investigators, are of Ukrainian origin. The Times reports that the Federal Office of the Criminal Investigation, BKA, is now investigating new leads that could implicate Ukraine and clear Russia of any wrongdoing. So the German investigators are looking at new claims. I love the wording of this, that can clear Russia. Not clear Biden, not clear Nuland, not clear Blinken. Forget about them. Just forget about them. Let's not talk about the U.S. and Biden and Nuland. And I'm happy that Nord Stream was blown up and it's a hunk of metal at the bottom of the ocean. Remember that statement from Nuland to Senator Cruz? Just forget about that. Let's not talk about that. This report, this investigation from the German authorities might actually clear Russia. It may clear Russia. How about that? But of course, Ukraine did it. In fact, investigative journalists from Germany, Poland, Sweden, and Denmark claimed today that the BKA were unconvinced of any Russian sabotage after thoroughly examining Moscow's naval maneuvers around the site of the blast. German investigators have now turned their attention to the Andromeda, a yacht hire by a Polish company from the North German port of Rostock, just weeks before the explosions were carried out. Andromeda is said to have docked in the marina of Christianau, a tiny Danish island northeast of Bornholm, and in close proximity to where 3 bombs went off in the days leading up to the sabotage. The yacht was found with traces of military-grade and underwater deployable explosives. The theory suggests that 5 men and a woman arrived in Germany using fake Bulgarian and Romanian passports before using the yacht as a base to deploy trained divers to plant the bombs around 70 meters below sea level. German investigators argue that the attacks would have required aid from state security services and claim to have found evidence that could implicate Ukraine, according to Süddeutsche Zeitung newspaper. The complex trail is said to lead to a shell company, a travel bureau, which was created by 2 Ukrainians in Warsaw. The report also suggests German authorities have singled out 2 other Ukrainians from near Kiev and Odessa as other members on board the yacht. One, a 26-year-old man, is alleged to have previously served in Ukraine's army. Despite these theories surfacing, security analysts have raised doubts over how such a complex operation could have been carried out by a tiny group on a small yacht without a submarine. Maybe they used Nemo's submarine right there. Maybe they used Nemo's submarine or the yellow submarine. Can you see the yellow submarine right over there? Maybe they used a yellow submarine. Oh boy. Gilligan, the skipper, Marianne, Ginger, the millionaire and his wife, and the professor. Can't forget the professor because he's the one that put the whole thing together. He's the only one smart enough to put this whole caper together. So there you have it. It's the Andromeda. It's Ukrainians. Ukrainians were on the Andromeda, and they're the ones that pulled this off. And they must have had help from some sort of state actor. Ukraine? I don't know. They mentioned Poland a whole lot here too. A lot of connections to Poland. Oh boy. So that is the latest in the Nord Stream pipeline sabotage. All of this is meant to divert away from Bidenopolis. That's all this is about. Divert attention away from Bidenopolis. They mention him a little bit in this article, but they discredit Seymour Hersh right away. They said Seymour Hersh's reporting is full of holes. Then they focus in on Russia and how Russia is the main focus of, or was the main focus of the investigation. But all of a sudden, it looks like Russia may be cleared of any wrongdoing. And we're going to focus in on Ukraine because we found evidence that Ukrainians were on board the Andromeda. The only thing that's missing was a submarine. A submarine. If they only had a submarine, then this case would be cracked. All right, that's an update on the Andromeda, and let's do an update on the F-16s, because we have a U.S. Air Force chief who is saying that the F-16s to Ukraine are not going to make any difference whatsoever. There has been a statement from, I believe, from either the State Department or the Pentagon, or maybe even NATO. I forgot who put out the statement, but some collective West entity put out a statement saying that the F-16s will be based in Ukraine. They will not be based in a NATO country. They're not going to take off from Poland or Romania or anything like that. They are going to be based inside of Ukraine territory. So that's going to be interesting if and when that happens. I imagine if there are F-16s in Ukraine territory, the Russians will quickly destroy those F-16s and that airfield, which means that the F-16s are being delivered to Ukraine, number one, to make money for the MIC, for the military-industrial complex, and so they can sell a whole lot of expensive F-35s to Europe. And the second reason is probably so that the F-16s, whatever can take off before the Russians destroy them, can launch from a distance, I guess, long-range missiles like Storm Shadows, and hopefully for the collective West, they're hoping that these missiles will hit some targets and, I don't know, do some damage that will lead to some Putin regime change. Who knows? But the fact that they're coming out and they're saying that the F-16s will be taking off from Ukrainian territory, to me just signals that the F-16s are not about changing the trajectory of this conflict one bit. I'll say it's more about money. It's more about money and some sort of missile strike inside of Crimea to shake things up for the Putin government. That's kind of my thinking. But a U.S. Air Force chief, he's saying the same thing. U.S. Air Force Chief Frank Kendall has poured cold water on claims that F-16s will have a significant impact in helping Ukraine defeat Russian forces, conceding that American-made fighter jets won't be a game changer for Kiev because air power isn't playing a decisive role in the conflict. The F-16s will give the Ukrainians an increment of capability that they don't have right now, Kendall said on Monday at an event in Washington, but it's not going to be a dramatic game changer. As far as I'm concerned, for the total military capabilities, an increment, it's going to give Ukraine an increment of weaponry, of an advantage, of capability, an increment of capabilities that they didn't have before, just an increment. So that's an update on the F-16 story. And we can now talk about Jungle Joseph Pharrell. Let's talk about Jungle Joseph Pharrell because he came out with a whole bunch of statements at a foreign minister's meeting, and he basically, I don't want to say he threatened India, but he basically said that he's upset that the EU can't punish India. That's what Pharrell said. He also threatened Serbia, by the way. He said that Serbia has to choose between Russia or the EU and choose now. That was pretty much what Pharrell says. So he's warning Serbia. He said you have to choose between the EU and Russia. If you continue to have good relations with Russia, well, then you're not going to enter the European Union. If I was in Serbia, I would be I would be crying. We're not going to enter the EU. Oh no. Oh no. Whatever will we do by entering a failing union? Oh boy. Let's see. India now. Pharrell in India. If India buys Russian oil, it's legal, Pharrell said. I don't blame India, not because I want to avoid problems, but because our sanctions do not extend beyond our territory. I cannot impose my will on the authorities of India. In addition to the price cap, India buys it cheaper, which means Russia gets less money, which is good. In addition, the export of Indian processed products to Europe has grown 7 times, Borrell said at this Euro diplomacy meeting. So you can see him coping a bit with the fact that he can't punish India, but there's no doubt that Pharrell is very, very upset that the EU can't do anything to India. Pharrell he's obsessed with like punishing India. He's really fixated on India for some reason. And he's expressing his frustration to the fact that he can't punish India or sanction India. Oh well, Pharrell. Boo-hoo. Boo-hoo, Jungle Joseph. The IAEA, the chief of the IAEA, is pushing once again for a plan to secure the Zaparosa nuclear power plants ahead of the Ukraine offensive. This is what Washington Post is reporting. And so the chief of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, he's preparing a draft agreement on safety at the Zaparosa NPP. The Washington Post is citing American and European diplomats to the paper that Grossi's plan includes 5 principles: a ban on placing heavy military equipment and military personnel at the station, a ban on firing at the station, and a ban on attacking personnel, protection of all safety and security systems at nuclear power plants, protection of all external power lines, and control over compliance with these rules. Yeah, I think this is another indication that the Zelensky regime is going to try and go after the ZNPP in the big spring, spring, winter, autumn, spring, fall, autumn, winter offensive. That's going to be their target. And it makes complete sense. The ZNPP provides the media win that the Zelensky regime wants. It's not going to change the trajectory of this conflict. It's not going to change the fact that Ukraine is losing this conflict and that Ukraine is going to lose this conflict to Russia, that the NATO proxy war against Russia is lost. It's not going to change any of that. But some sort of move on the ZNPP provides a whole lot of media attention and media talking points for the Zelensky regime and for the collective West. And at the end of the day, that is what is most important for the collective West and for the Zelensky regime. The media war. That is their number one priority. And so it makes complete sense that the target of the big offensive that offends me and you and is counter to the offensive of the offended who are participating in the offensive of the offended, it makes perfect sense that the number one target would be the ZNPP. That's where they're going to, that's what they're going to go after. I think, I would say, let's say 75%. I'm putting it at 75% chance that the first target they're going to go after in the big offensive is going to be the nuclear power plant. That's going to provide a whole lot of media headlines, And then you're going to have the collective West say that Russia is endangering the ZNPP and we could have a nuclear meltdown. And why is Russia firing on the ZNPP? Just allow Ukraine to take it over. Ukraine forces are close to taking it over. You're going to get all of these media narratives to try and dislodge the Russians from the ZNPP. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. And I think the Washington Post with this article is preparing us for this. So let's do some clown whirls. let's talk about some clown worlds. And the first clown world, we go to Olaf Schultz. Olaf Schultz was speaking at, I believe, a kindergarten, and he described the Republican frontrunner, Donald Trump, for the US elections. He described him as divisive, while he praised Joe Bidenopoulos. German Chancellor Olaf Schultz has expressed his support for Joe Biden in next year's US presidential election, saying the incumbent president is better suited for the top job, thanks to his extensive experience in politics. Speaking to pupils at a primary school, not a kindergarten, a primary school near Berlin on Monday, Schultz was asked who he wants to win, Biden or Trump. He replied that the current president is better and that he hopes he will be reelected, arguing that the 80-year-old Democrat knows what you have to do to prevent the world from going to war. Regarding Trump, the chancellor said the former president stands for a great division in the country, and the U.S. will not have a good future if he wins in 2024. That's Olaf Schultz. He is throwing his support behind Joe Bidenopoulos, Greece's favorite son, because Joe Bidenopoulos knows what needs to be done. Let's go for a walk in order to avoid a war. Oh man, Olaf Schultz. Oh boy. So let's see. Since we're on the subject of collective West leaders, how about this article from the New York Times with the title, "This year's G7 summit doubles as a club for unloved leaders. The relatively weak approval ratings for President Biden and his group of 7 partners highlights the fragility of free societies facing deep political divides." So when the New York Times has to run an article like this, basically saying that the G7 leaders are a bunch of unpopular losers, you know it's bad. You know it's bad when the New York Times has to put out a story like this one. and we look at the approval rating of the G7 leaders. One sec. Seem to have hit a wind tunnel here. So the approval ratings of the G7 leaders is as follows: Biden at 42% approval, Trudeau at 39%, Schultz at 34%, Sunak at 33%, Kishida at 31%, and Macron at 25%. Those are the G7 leaders, folks. The leaders of the free world and their approval ratings. And what's Putin's approval rating? 75%. I think 79% was Putin's last approval rating that was recorded, that was polled. Something like 79%. The unpopular losers of the G7, the masters of the universe, the G7 leaders. Trudeau's approval was what? What was that number? Right now I'm at a second cup. Trudeau is at 39%. Right now I'm at a second cup, which is a Canadian coffee franchise, interestingly enough. And Trudeau has 39% of the population actually likes Trudeau. there's actually 33% of the population in the UK that approve of Sunak. 34% of people approve of Schultz. Who are these people? Who are these people? Oh boy. Schultz is talking about how he's pulling for Biden in the elections. After Biden blew up his pipeline, the Nord Stream pipeline that was so critical for Germany's energy security, and he's still backing Biden. Man, Schultz, that is pathetic. That is absolutely pathetic. But according to the Times, it's not Biden that was behind the Nord Stream. It's a bunch of Ukrainians on the Andromeda yacht. Oh, man. They blow up his pipeline, and he still supports Bidenopolis. What does that tell you? Anyway, that is the video, everybody. TheDuran.locals.com. We are on Rockfin, Rumble, ODYSEE, BitChute, and Telegram. And go to the Duran shop. 10% off. Use the code Good Day. And that is my Duran Greek baseball hats right there. So pick up some Duran merch, get 10% off. Use the code Good Day. And if you want some food ideas for today, why not cook up a traditional souvlaki, a kalamaki traditional souvlaki. All right, everybody, take care.